What's up, y'all? It's Johnny King with another episode of the Becoming Kings podcast. And I am so privileged and excited to have Marjah Simon-Meinefeld in the house, all the way from Germany. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for taking time to join us.
Thank you for inviting me, Johnny. I really appreciate being a queen on the King's podcast.
Exactly. I'm not a king yet, but I'm on my way at least. I hope that's the whole purpose. So definitely taking notes from you. So I we connected through Tony Robbins,
Yes.
which is where I meet so many of the most amazing people in the world, and I'm just excited to get into all the good stuff that you're up to. But first and foremost, I think we've talked about this. The fact that you told me that you have a granddaughter blows my mind because I feel like you look like you're 25. But
Thanks. Grandson, but yeah,
I'm sorry,
yes.
grandson. There you go.
Yeah, yes, he's 2 years old. And you can just, say more of that. It's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah. Oh man, it's so good. But I guess, just excited to get into it because you are not only an author yourself, but you're an author coach. You're a best-selling author, right? You're a speaker, a worldwide speaker. You're a writer coach, and you help
Mhm.
people kind of elicit their stories. Correct?
Yes, yeah.
Tell
And
those that are listening and watching a little bit more about like what you do, and then also why you love doing it.
oh, absolutely. Well, first of all, most of my clients, oh my God, I absolutely love all of my clients. Most of them don't write a word. And this is what I do. I help um, people to get out of their own way and share their story.
Hmm.
We all have such amazing experiences, wisdom, advice, aha, learning, lessons learned throughout life. And unfortunately, most of those go to the grave.
Mm.
And I'm on a personal mission to rob the grave of all of that wisdom and put it into the hands and hearts of the people that whose lives it can actually affect and change.
Mm.
And so that is why I do what I do. And they say over 80% of people, they want to write a book. They have this desire in them, this something. Sometimes, I mean, almost everyone I speak to, they said, I asked them, how long has it been that you wanted to write a book? And 5 years, 10
Mm.
years,
Hmm.
20 years since I was a child. And why haven't you done it? And I hear all of these doubts and stories and things that just got in the way. And
Hmm.
so I help them to get out of their own way so that they can make their dream come true. And I absolutely love it. They meet with me, and I'm an attorney by profession, and I use my attorney skills to draw their story out of them. And I ask them questions, and just like when I was in court, I can hear the next question that needs to be asked to create the entire story. And only this is friendly and nice and fun.
Right, right. Why do you think? I mean, why is it that we all have this kind of like, well, we don't all, but a lot of people do, and myself included, feel like we have like a book or books, multiple books
Mhm.
within us, a story to tell. Why do you feel like just that's part of a lot of people's human nature is to want to have like there's something in us that we need to get out and onto paper.
I believe it's because we are created to be creators,
Mm.
and that is part of creation, sharing who we are, sharing what we've learned. And also, like I said in my book, The One Law, we're all connected, we're all one. So we're this energetic force, and we're always looking to expand each other and to help each other and to build each other up. And I believe that part of that desire to create your book, to bring you, is part of that desire to share your story, to live on forever, create that legacy, that connection with other human beings. You say,
Mm.
hey, I did this, you can too. Or I went through this, so you don't have to. Or, hey, this is a distinction that I learned, and now you can do even better.
Hmm.
Most of us really are champions for one another. That's what I believe. And I think that desire is our highest self
Hmm.
calling to the highest self in everyone else.
Mm. I love that. I guess the thought goes to just because I think I forget the actual statistics, but I feel like so few people, a lot of people probably start a book, but very few people
Mhm.
actually finish it and get it published, which is why, you know, coaches support like you are so instrumental in helping people actually get through the whole process, because it can be very overwhelming. But what do you feel
Mhm.
like are the most common pitfalls or, you know, roadblocks that people run into in trying
Yeah.
to get their book out of themselves?
Well, one of the things is with my first book that I published, I went through all of the pitfalls. I went through all of the pain and the anguish. And this is why I understand it so intimately. It took me, on year 5, I was still rewriting. Year 7, I was rewriting again. Year 10, I'm like, oh God, this is such a pain. This is never going away. I'm just going to publish it as it is, whatever I'm sick of this thing. And it was this heavy burden that was always weighing on me. And I'm like, you know what? Sharing wisdom should be a light, loving, fun experience. We're doing something good for the world. It shouldn't feel like that. It was contradictory.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I finished the manuscript, I went with a traditional publisher, and they took most of my royalties. And I'm like, wait, I did a decade of work, and you're taking all of my money? And then they didn't help me marketing the book. And they said, oh, you want us to market it? You're going to have to pay us. What? You want more money for me to pay for you to market the book
Of course.
that you're already getting? And it was just insult after insult. And I tried marketing it myself and running my business at the same time. And I'm just like, because I had a different business. And it was, like I said, it was a heavy, painful burden. And then the whole time, I didn't have me in my ear telling me that it's okay and what to do and not to do. And so I hear all those voices in my head saying, who's going to want this? Is it good enough? Are you really sure? How are you showing up as the expert? You don't have it all figured out. Who do you think you are? And all of these voices of doubt and insecurities were going through my head, which also makes the process that much longer.
Mm-hmm.
Because we pull back and we hold back and we shrink up, and we're afraid to stand up and be our authentic self. And, fortunately, we have amazing people like Tony who have coached us and trained us to be amazing coaches and help people
Mm-hmm.
to step outside of themselves and to get their true nature, into their true nature and get things done. And with my third book, I had such a different experience.
Mm-hmm.
It was fun, and it was light, and it was easy, and it was beautiful. And I had this amazing team that I brought around me to handle the marketing, to handle the publishing, to handle this, to handle that, all of the things that in their areas of expertise. And I brought them all together. And I was like, this is the experience that becoming an author should be
Mm-hmm.
for everyone. That's what I believe. This
Mm-hmm.
is the experience that should happen. And so I put on my weird attorney brain and thought, okay, how can I duplicate this experience systematically so that I can bring new authors into the world? And so I work with professionals and successful, busy entrepreneurs who have, you guys are amazing. You've gone through so much. You stepped out of your comfort zone again and again and again. Life has knocked you down and you've gotten back up. And you definitely have stories to tell that are
Yeah.
worth telling.
Yeah.
And so I help people to do that.
Well, when you say that most of the people that you work with never write a word,
Mhm.
explain that a little bit.
Yeah, like I said, I'm an attorney by profession. And so one of the excuses, one of the barriers, I should say, that keep people from becoming authors is actual writing. Either they don't have time to sit for a decade and write a book and be held up on a hill in a cabin with an old-fashioned typewriter or
Yeah.
whatever, and to
A
write their
lantern and yeah.
brandy in one hand and
Yeah.
you know and nobody wants to do that. Nobody has time for that.
Yeah.
And or they are insecure about their own writing skills.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's a craft, it's a skill set,
Mm,
and they may not have confidence in how it's developed or sharing that with the world. And so what I do is, just like you and I are talking here, my clients meet with me 8 to 10 times for an hour and just have a conversation. And I walk them through their story. I ask them questions. I bring it out of them, and I
mm,
capture all of that in their authentic words, in their authentic voice. And I create their manuscript for them
mm,
based on that.
mm,
And then once their manuscript is approved, I bring my team around them and we create their book and we get it marketed and we put it out into the world. And we do so many things. All of the stuff that has to be done that seems overwhelming and too much, we handle it all for them.
that's so
So
cool.
they go from beginning of I have an inkling of an idea, I might know something. They go from one day I might publish a book to it's done,
Mm. What I
and they
love
do it
about
in a matter of weeks.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And what I love about that too is that there's such a different. Um, well, before I even say that, I would say that so many people that I communicate with, they're always like, "Oh gosh, I like how you use voice notes. I'm more likely to speak, actually, record a message just so they can hear the inflection of my voice, and they don't. There's so much that can be lost a lot of times in text, even when I'm
Yes.
that I don't like even doing text messages, and it makes more sense to me too that when I sat down to write my book and I get in my head about trying to make the right phrases of words, and sentence
Mhm.
structure and grammar. I start losing myself. And it's just so frustrating that it just makes so much more sense to have a
Yes.
conversation with you, record it, and then you do your
Mhm.
magic to bring it to life on paper. Right.
Yes,
So
yes.
that makes so much
And
more
and
sense.
and one of the great things about that is, just like you said, tonality is so important. And so not only I'm not just, transcribing, I'm listening for what was meant, the emotion behind it, what was said, what and how that would relay to the reader.
Mm,
One of my clients, he put it so beautifully. He said, "You're a conduit."
mhm,
He said, something static, like just something on paper, the words on paper are often dead and there seems to be nothing there. But because it's coming through you, you're a conduit and you can actually take the energy that we're giving you and translate that energy onto the paper with those words.
mm.
And so and so when the reader gets that story, that message, they can still feel that energy.
Yeah, I can sense how that just makes. I mean, it's the difference in the same thing with like music. You can hear
Yes.
music that is uninspired, and maybe even the words are
Mhm.
like, okay, this should be I should feel this artist more than
Yes.
and there's a disconnect between what's being conveyed through a voice versus the words, and I feel like this is kind of a very similar process with writing a book. Would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. When you were saying that, I had a memory of being in New York City, sitting in those little clubs with no sign on the wall, listening to these amazing jazz artists playing and singing their music. And there's something that energy that's just reverberating through the room and through every person. And you're like, oh, wow. And then even seeing them, how intimately they're connected with their instruments
Mm,
and playing and just in that moment, in that zone.
mm,
And what we do when we're speaking, when we're sharing our stories orally, we get to tap into that energy.
mm, mm. Yeah, and again, that seems like such a more fluid, natural process in being able to actually tell stories, because we can all tell our story, than it
Mhm.
is to sit down and try to get it out on paper. And even just sometimes the mechanics of, you know, typing for some people might just be
Yeah,
too laborious to and not fast enough to actually get, you know, the emotion
yes,
out. So
yeah.
that's awesome. Well, I want to jump in a little bit more to, and let those that are listening get to know you a little bit more. Tell the
Thanks.
listeners a little bit more about your book. Well, you have several, but the one law for
Mhm.
amazing abundance in every area of your life. Tell a little bit more about where, where that all kind of came from, and about the triple devastation that you experienced in your life. Like, let's rewind the clock a little bit. Tell a little bit more of your story.
Oh, different questions. All right. Well, let's start with the easy one.
Yeah, yeah,
The one law that actually came to me almost through it, because it was like a spiritual download, I guess is the only way I could describe it. I was woken up out of my sleep at like 3, 4, 5 in the morning over and over with just words pouring through me. And I just started writing and writing and writing, trying to capture it. And I would just keep writing until it stopped. And this went on for, I don't know how long, days, a couple of weeks. And when that finally stopped, I read through what I wrote and I went, I'm not publishing that. And again, that those voices in your head and stepping back into ego and, oh no, people are going to think I'm crazy. People, what are they going to say? And this makes no sense to me. I don't know what's, and all of these voices and thoughts. And in 2 years, I showed it to one person and she said, you have to publish this. You have to share this. And I was like, oh, no. And I hid it away on my computer for about 2 years. And at the time, during that time, I was working as an attorney. And I knew that it was not what I was supposed to be doing anymore. I was getting physically ill because I was ignoring the calling within me. I was ignoring the emotional and mental toll that it was taking on me. And I was just trying to do what, society tells you to do, what we've all grown up, just do your job, keep your head down, get your paycheck, go home. Jobs are supposed to be painful and not supposed to be fun, and all of those lies, and so 5 years I felt this way, and that's in the last job. So finally one day, like Tony says, it takes a heartbeat to get to that moment of decision. And I was at work and something happened and I said, done. And I got up from my desk and I walked across the street and I went to the personnel office and I just started crying from just relief. And I'm like, I'm done. And it took a couple of months to get out of that system and leave properly. But that moment of decision started a whole new journey. A few days after I said I'm done, I heard a small still voice say, it's time, it's time. And I knew it was talking about that book. And that's when I said, okay. And I was no longer in ego. I was no longer in my head. I had no more resistance. And I said, okay, I'll publish the book. And everything that I needed, all of the resources, all of the people just started to appear. And it, like I said, it was fun and it was easy and it was fluid. I'm like, wow. And so and a lot of those amazing people are still people that I work with to help my clients.
Well, and I feel like too, there's probably so much, I mean, this is the 30,000 foot view of this, but there's probably so much of the work you're doing, interpersonal work, I imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, that allowed you to kind of tap into, spiritually, whatever, that where things flowed from you versus coming from ego and where there's resistance, it takes a decade. There's so much struggle there, right? You're probably working on yourself so much that it allowed you to kind of open up and be kind of an open conduit to hearing, you're done with this, finish this, let's go with this, right? You were open to
absolutely, absolutely. And we all have that. Kings, every single one of you has that within you. It's I started it's like you said, decades of work, but of course, I've started working with Tony Robbins in 2010. So it's been a long time of a lot of introspective work and showing up again and again and again for myself and learning to let go of old beliefs and old identities and examining and re-examining and learning and growing and opening up spiritually and opening up my emotions and stepping out of judgment of myself, stepping out of judgment of others, and learning to really live in a different space, that connection in your highest self, while still existing and communicating and being with everyone on earth. It's a combination and work. And I've gotten to learn from so many amazing people. I've gotten to work with Joseph McClendon and had the privilege of actually being coached by him and learning from him, and Luke Wren, one of my dear friends, mentors, coaches that I've worked with for a couple of years and still am. And like I said, I think learning about ourselves, uncovering who we are, is a constant journey.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's a never-ending discovery of amazingness.
Mm-hmm.
And we're human, and we're gonna have experiences and things that push up against us, things that we don't like, things that are unpleasant. And as we experience these things, you know, what meaning are we giving to these experiences? What is that making of us? It's not about the experiences, about who we're becoming in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And that becoming is part of what comes out in our stories.
Mm. What I hear you saying too is it's almost like you know, a relationship with writing a book is very much like a relationship with, you know, a significant other, where it's gonna
Yes.
almost trigger all the things that you have to work your way through, otherwise the book will never get done. But
Yeah.
also like how, you know, how you show up with your in your relationship with your book is how you're going to show up in your relationship with other people, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So many of my clients tell me it's so therapeutic when we meet, and they several people, when it gets to the end of the working relationship, where their book is published, it's out in the world, you know, they're best-selling author, and they're excited and they're happy, and there's a tinge of sadness always, which is really, I really appreciate that. They're like, I can't believe this is done.
Mm.
First of all, thank you, but then they say, we don't get to talk anymore every week like we did. And I actually have one client right now. I think she's prolonging it just a little bit because of that. And I was like, you're about done. Oh, no, we have a few more weeks to get there. And I see what it is. And I'm just like, okay.
It just shows there's a lot of value to obviously what you're offering, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, but I feel like too, there's I'm just kind of, you know, assuming, but or putting this out there. I can imagine that there's a guy that's listening to this and he's thinking, first of all, like, even though he feels like, man, this conversation is resonating, there's something inside him, a story that he wants to tell, but there's a, who am I to write a book? Maybe I'm just a, you know, investment banker, or, you know, I'm
Yes.
just someone who would never, like, what's the purpose of even writing a book, because it doesn't fit in line with his
Mhm.
box of a lifestyle, right? And
Mhm.
yet I think it's kind of cool to think about, you know, future generations. You know, I have a book that my
Yes.
dad wrote when he was my age, you know.
Oh, what a blessing.
It's
Oh
kind of
my,
cool. Yeah,
that is amazing.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, I think it's just pretty fun to think about that. But I gotta imagine, like I said, there's guys who are, they can already feel this twinge of resistance or fear.
Yes.
You know, again, how, if you were to have a 30-minute call with someone like this, how would you begin to get them off the ledge, if you will, and start to just like let go of that ego or that fear or whatever's resistance coming up in them?
Well, first, we all have that.
Mm-hmm.
And that is part of the human experience when we are stepping into something new and there's uncertainty. It's natural to feel that inner resistance. Our mind wants to, quote, protect us, pull us back. You know, but when we step beyond that and we see that this desire is there for a reason, you know, because it wants to materialize, it wants to become real. And when we step out of what will people think of me, or what do I think people will think of me, because most people are not thinking any of the things that we think they're thinking of us.
Mm-hmm.
And especially those that are waiting for our message. You know, they are hoping and waiting, and we step out of ourselves and out of our own beliefs and thoughts and into, I'm going to change somebody's life. I mean, think about it, Johnny, how many books have you picked up at different points in your life where there was something in there that changed how you thought, how you felt, change the trajectory of where your life was going. Have you experienced that?
Oh, all the time. And interesting enough, like there are also those type of people who are like, I get something that resonates and I start changing my life because of it. And then I have people like, oh, did you just read a book and now you're going to change your life? I'm like, hell yes, absolutely. But
Yeah.
like financial planners and stuff like that, they're like, where did this come from? A book that you wrote or read? I'm like, yeah, I did. So that's happened a lot, but
Yes.
I think that's the path that I'm on. And I think people that listen to this podcast are on that trajectory of constant, never ending improvement. It's like, it's
Hmm.
growth is like breathing to them,
Yes.
and to not write their book and not
Mhm.
share their story and not use their voice, because a lot of times I feel like guys are taught, and women too, let's be honest, if
Mhm.
not even more so women, but guys are taught to not really express, you know,
Yeah.
or connect with that deeper story, right? Just to keep a
Yes.
surface layer. Let's just talk about sports or business, work, making
Yeah.
money, women, whatever the case might be. But then there's a lot more, let's say, pain and happiness and sorrow and joy,
Yes.
like to tap into. And that's kind of really where the
Yes.
the fulfillment is, I feel like,
The
Yeah.
humanity, yes. And men, you are, like I said, you're incredible. You have so many experiences of things that you've done, all of the things that you've felt and never said.
Hmm.
Those are the life-changing things. Those are the things that your children need to hear, that your partners need to hear, that your parents and nieces and nephews and friends' children, and these are the lives that you're impacting and touching, either positively by stepping out and sharing that story and that message, or negatively by
Hmm.
holding it in
Hmm.
and letting it die.
Hmm. I think.
And
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, please.
Well, I was just going to say, I know, at least for me, a big part of the process of evolving that I've really stepped into since my first Tony Robbins event in 2009, was
Mhm.
just starting to vocalize the pain. I hated my dad for so many years of my life, and to be
Mhm.
able to, in an hour and a half time, vocalize, get all that stuff out. Man, did
Yes.
that very quickly change my relationship with him, you know and
Yeah.
then all that anger, all that disappointment, all that repressed emotion, getting that stuff out in the last several years, that has helped me evolve as well as a man. I think there's a big part of that would come as a result of this, kind of like
Yes.
part writing a book, part therapy, right? Like you're saying, it's
Yes.
like just talk therapy of like getting like this stuff out, and for the first time actually vocalizing those stories that we have in our head. I think
Yes.
there's
Yeah.
a lot of healing power to that.
There really is. And, and then what I've learned through this process is, while we have our unique stories and our unique lessons and ahas, there is nothing that is unique to the human experience. The pains and the anguish and the trials that you've experienced, others have too. Recently, I put together a book for 16 authors. It was a compilation book, 16 women from around the world
Wow.
sharing how they went through whatever situation they went through to become business owners, entrepreneurs, and level up and change their lives. And
Hmm.
they shared such amazingly intimate stories. And what I saw was that there were so many commonalities in all of the stories.
Hmm.
But these were women from around the entire world, with different cultures, different ages, different races, different upbringings, different religions. Yet the stories were just mirroring one another in so many ways.
Hmm.
And so, when you're looking at your story and what you've gone through, look at the fact that that is a commonality for us all as human beings. And you're not alone. You're not a freak. It's not weird or strange. There's nothing taboo about any of it. And then when you step into the fact that you have become who you've become,
Hmm.
either because of or despite that,
Hmm.
that's incredible.
Yeah.
And that is so powerful. And that's what fascinates me. This is why I love what I do.
Mm.
I am absolutely in awe, in fascination, in just, I bow down to the king, queen within you people, because like to step into what you've created and what you're doing with your life is just amazing.
Mm. It's inspiring because I do feel like I was having this conversation with a buddy over dinner last night even, and he's like, I feel like, there's just so many different people. We're so different. We come from different backgrounds, we're different races, we're different countries, different cultures. And I'm like, I disagree. Yes, we have different interests, and like I feel like it's the exact opposite. We're so much more alike than we are different, you know.
Yes.
And even like this time last year when I had a bunch of my black friends on my show because we were talking about George Floyd and all the things that were going on with racial justice, and like I, I haven't gone through anything that they've been through, you know.
Mhm.
And yet at the same time there's a commonality of just empathizing, understanding pain, and
Yes.
prejudice and judgment and shame and all this
Yes.
stuff uh, that I almost do to myself. I can empathize because I'm so hard on myself, and I
Mhm.
judge myself. I judge other people. I'm angry and all this stuff that I feel like it's so important to connect with people's stories, because if you look at it with like Tony Robbins, you go to a Tony Robbins event, he has an intervention with one person, but
Yes.
all of us 5,000 people are seeing ourselves in that one person, even though that
Yes.
person might be Indian, growing
Mm.
up in India or Pakistan, whatever.
Yeah.
We're so much, I think, so much more alike than we are different. And that's why it's so important to share a story, because it inspires other people to like, oh, I'm not alone, right?
Yes.
You find that the
Absolutely.
case?
Absolutely. One of my clients, Peter, he actually has a line that where he talks about that in his upcoming book. And he talks about the fact that biologically, um, we are, what is it, 97% identical.
Mm.
Every single one of us, male, female, old, young, whatever, 97% identical in every single way. So these differences that we're focusing on, the numbers, or I think the numbers are right, are we're focusing on 3%
Mm.
to make ourselves feel special, to make ourselves feel better than somebody else, to make ourselves say, I'm not them. And you're like, really, why would you focus on something as minute as 3%? If you look at the 97%, we're one. We are, we're biologically the same.
Yeah.
And when you look at that, you're like, oh, well, I'm you and you're me. So okay, let's move on. Let's
Yeah.
let's let's build something beautiful together.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think about it too in terms of an intimate relationship. If you focus only on the 3% of differences, that can kind of be a cancer to the 97% of the
Yes.
commonalities and the love that are there, right? And it's no
Yeah.
different in a platonic relationship, than it
Hmm.
is with an intimate relationship. And I do feel like so many times we are judging other people, or we're judging ourselves. That like,
Yes.
why would I put a book out there because no one's going to relate, or I'm so embarrassed, or I'm ashamed, when so many people,
Yeah.
I feel like vulnerability begets vulnerability, and people are like,
Hmm.
oh my God, to
Yeah.
have the
And there's
courage.
actually a strength in that. There
Totally.
is such a powerful strength in being vulnerable, in being open, in being real.
Hmm.
And there's something that happens when we step out of inauthenticity into being authentically us.
Mm.
There's a level of power that I just can't even describe. All of those uncertainties that plague us at night when we're alone, when we're about to close our eyes and our heads are hitting the pillow, all of those self-doubts and uncertainties, they disappear when we're authentically ourselves.
Mm.
They'll come back because we're still human, but then we can speak back to them.
Mm.
I'm like, thank you, but this is the truth of who I am. I know who I am. This is my story. No shame, no worries, no issues.
Hmm.
This is what I've been able to do anyway. This
Hmm.
is because of that story. This is who I am.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What I love about the process of what we're talking about and writing a book and sharing your story and in whatever form is that
Mm-hmm.
it works in direct contrast to the lie, I believe it's a
Yes.
lie that we're not enough, you know,
Yes.
that we don't have it in us to inspire others, or who cares about our story, you know. And I think
Mhm.
there's, again, like I said, there's actually such a healing process. I can speak from my own experience of like struggling this past year and getting my book out and really going through some shitty stuff that
Mhm.
really needed to come to the surface after 40 plus years of my life, that really
Mhm.
helped me grow. But if I hadn't have taken on that risk of writing a book,
Yeah.
and I took the pressure off myself. I was like, you know what, even if it's not that I knew I was going to publish it because I think I needed to see it through, completion. But I'm like, if no one
Mhm.
even writes it, it doesn't matter. This
Mm.
is really about, like you said 20, 30 minutes ago, it's really about the man I'm going to become through the process. And this is going to be really,
Yes.
really tough, but I'm willing to take the risk
Yes.
in stepping into it. I think every single person, especially for their first book, is going to feel very similar
Well,
emotional.
the wonderful thing is when they're working with me, they don't have to feel that way
Mm,
because they're not going it alone. When we're going at things alone, we're trying to do things ourselves. We hear all those voices of doubt. We get stuck,
yeah,
and that's why a lot of people, a decade has passed and they still haven't done it.
right.
But I was describing this to one of my clients. We were about to publish. It was already, everything was set. She said, wait. Maybe we should, pause a couple of weeks and look at it again and think about this. And I said, let me ask you something. When you go on to you're at an amusement park, right? And you're standing in line to get on the ride, you have the option to get off the line and not get on the ride, right? She's like, yes. And I said, and when you step up and you sit in the ride, you have the option to say, wait, hold on, I want to get off, right? And it's embarrassing, but you can climb back down through the crowd and leave, right? Yeah. I said, when they pull the harness down over you and they flip that switch, do you have an option to get off that ride?
No, you're committed.
And she said, well, no. I said, what if you're scared? Do you have an option to get off that ride? She's like, no. What if you vomit? Will they stop that ride? No. What if it comes out the other end? Will they stop that ride? No.
Yeah,
You're going on that roller coaster, right? She's like,
yeah.
yeah. I said, so at that point, what is your only choice? And she said, to enjoy the ride.
Uh-huh.
I said, welcome to the roller coaster.
Yeah.
And she was
Just
like,
breathe.
okay. I
Yeah,
said, so
yeah,
breathe. This is a beautiful, joyous experience. This is something that you've always wanted to do, and you're stepping into it.
yeah,
You've done it. This is a wonderful thing.
yeah.
And she's like, okay, go. And so the difference between trying to do it yourself and working with me and my team is that it takes that pressure off of you
Mm,
of trying to fight your way through those voices and those doubts and all of the technicalities of how to do it. You don't even have to worry about how to do it. Before the first meeting, my clients, I was like, well, what do I need to do to prepare? Nothing.
mm,
Show up.
mm.
And they're like, really? Just show up.
Yeah. It makes it so easy. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool to think about. Again, it would be natural to feel those things, and yet you don't have to. You
Yeah.
can certainly. There's a different way, and
And like I said, that's what I learned between my first book and my last book, and so I bring that lightness and that joy and that fun energy and that ease of becoming an author and sharing your message with the world and using your book to up level in your business, up level your credibility, to leave your legacy out into the world, to finally satisfy that inner desire in you to become an author and share your message.
see, this is why. That's precisely why I thought it'd be so relevant to have you on, is because the whole concept for me of becoming kings and queens, let's just be
Mhm.
honest, is us becoming our best versions of ourselves, which quite frankly never ends. There you go. I love that, as she holds up a crown. Um, that journey never ends, and I believe that journey continues long, beyond this human experience. And yet it takes courage to show up every single day, just like going into the gym, just like keeping
Yes.
your marriage going. It's like being the
Yes.
best version of yourself. You have to keep becoming more and more of uh, a dominant force in creating the kingdoms of your life, not, controlling other people, but just being able to control yourself, right? So,
Yes.
um, given that, I did think of one question I want to ask you, and that's just more of a personal question. Like, but who inspires you in your life and in the work that you do?
Hmm. I am so inspired every day by every single person I come in contact with.
Mm,
Like I said, when I see people getting up again and again, rising from the ashes, becoming again and again. I've done it myself in my own life, and I know what it takes, and it's not easy. And when I see that, that spirit. And I hear some of the greats like Oprah Winfrey. Her life is so inspiring to me. Getting to become what she's become from where she came from is just amazing to me.
yeah.
And I look at her every day as a almost like a godmother beacon kind of, like she did this, I can do this too.
Mm,
And when those voices of doubt creep in, I hear her story. Again, the story is so powerful. It helps other people to go into action. She shared stories, parts of her life that most people hide away forever.
mhm,
And she shared it with the world openly. And that power that she owns, that authenticity,
mm.
helped her to create and become the woman that she became. And so I look at that as I encounter my own voices of doubt and insecurities and my humanness. I'm like, you know what? You can do that. And then I look at people like one of our, amazing mentors and coaches, Tony, and like I said, his story and everything he's gone through, and he shares that openly and authentically. There's this 7-foot massive dude talking about my mommy poured soap down my throat. It's like, and that level of honesty and vulnerability is wow. And that's what gives other people the ability to raise their hand and say, me too, can I want to up level and change my life and move through this story and create my power story, create my kingdom, create my queendom, and
Mhm,
stepping into that.
mhm.
I'm inspired by all of the authors that I'm helping to bring out into the world. Like, just if you can make an attorney speechless, you've done something really amazing. I'm truly speechless when I see how they suddenly are sharing something that I didn't expect,
Mm,
and they go, because of this, this is who I am. And I'm like, that is awesome.
mm, mm.
I'm
Oh,
inspired by you, Johnny,
wow.
stepping up and creating, this amazing platform for all of these wonderful kings to come together and step into their own stories and their own authenticity, and to really level up their life. This
Oh,
is a beautiful community that you've created.
well, thank you. Yeah, and I feel like uh, Oprah is one of my, and Tony, amongst many others, one of my, especially getting into entrepreneurship. There was years there, honestly, where I was so in my own way, but then I'd pop on a master class with her and Jay Z, or her and you know uh, Samuel Jackson, or whomever, right? And
Yes,
just to then to learn more about her story of being raped and getting pregnant, and just
yeah,
at such a young age, and see where she went from, to where she is today.
yes,
It's so inspiring. But because I heard stories of vulnerability and like a lack of shame, and then to see like, oh, they're okay, they didn't die, people didn't like jump on them and push them
yeah.
down because of those stories. She
Yeah,
and
people actually
Tony.
pull you up and be like
Yeah,
champion you and support you and cheer
yeah,
with you.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
the
that's
opposite of what that voice is telling us.
exactly, and that's my point. Is like I think that's the importance of doing this type of work. Writing a book, sharing your story, is as scary as it is. It as much as I've experienced, it creates the exact opposite result from what we're fearing. We're fearing
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, you're such an idiot. I can't believe you went through that. You should be ashamed. Instead, people are like, no, I totally get you. I go through the same thing. I struggled with that same thing too. Or like my heart goes out to you, that like vulnerability, like I said, begets vulnerability, right?
Yeah.
And so I think
Yeah.
that's the beautiful part of this process that we're talking about.
Yeah, and they're not feeling sorry for you. They're in awe. They're amazed. They're so proud, and they're aspiring to have the courage that you displayed, that you've shown.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so you've actually elevated into a hope, into something that tells them this is possible.
Mm-hmm. What, and just kind of wrapping things up, what is, just talking about your lineage and your parents and your grandparents, I'm asking this question blind because I don't know that side of your story, but what what quality have you taken from previous generations that you really honor in them, that you honor yourself, and that you're honoring in your daughters and in your
My
future
grand,
family? Yeah.
yeah. Wow, that is a great question. I could tell that was a spirit-led question. Uh, my grandfather, he passed away last year, and he was 98 years old.
Wow.
And he had a second grade education.
Wow.
Yet he owned one of the first Black farms in New York. He owned a trucking company. He was a preacher who preached in a reverend who preached in 2 churches. He raised almost a dozen children with my grandmother.
Wow.
Um, and he was in the army at a time when it was segregated and difficult and painful. And he was actually here in Germany at a not so pleasant time, fighting for the freedom of people around the world here being here in Germany, fighting for a freedom that he didn't get in his own country, but yet putting his life on the line to help other people get that freedom. And so that lineage is just like amazing to me. I still remember when I was also in the military. I was in the Army and I was in the Air Force. I was enlisted and I was an officer. And I was standing in my grandfather's kitchen one day, and he looked at me. He said, "You're in the Army." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "And you're an officer?" "Yes, sir." "And you're a JAG officer?" "Yes, sir." And he said, wow. And the pride in his eyes, it brings tears to my eyes to this day. I'll never forget, because when he went through, that wasn't even a possibility. But because he was willing to step through his stories of any kind of limiting beliefs of, I only have a second grade education, I'm a Black man in segregated America, I have all of these mouths to feed, all of these stories and limitations, he stepped through and just did whatever had to be done. Because he did that, I was able to become a JAG officer in the military. Without him and people like him creating their story, stepping through those doubts, I wouldn't exist. And just like you shared about your dad, I had all of these apprehensions about my father as well. He was not a nice man in a lot of ways. And yet, once I stepped out of that story of he did this and didn't do that, and looked at who he was, a human being, a soul that was doing the best he could with what he knew. He grew up in Trinidad and Tobago, where my father's family is from, and was sent to America with his siblings at like 17 years old.
Crazy.
And make a life, go figure it out.
Yeah, good luck. Yeah.
And then suddenly to find himself, he was only 20 years older than me. So at 20 years old, to find himself a father and to stay and to be a father and stand up in that and do what was hard, even though he had no role model and no way of understanding what to do. He did the best he could. And all of the qualities that I thought I hated in my father are the best qualities in me. because what I learned is that uh, traits, characteristics are not positive or negative. They're just characteristics. It's
Mm,
how we use them. And so my father had a wonderful gift for words and storytelling and writing. And he used a lot of that. He wanted to. I saw him writing and trying to write his memoirs and his book and share his stories and write screenplays. And he never could get out of, figure it out how. And
mm,
it never went anywhere. And I know that was frustrating for him.
completely.
And he used a lot of those same skills to manipulate and to tell and to trick people. And I thought, oh, that's terrible. I don't ever want to be like that. But I use those same exact skills to help people to elevate, to get out of their own way, to see what's possible, to have hope in their life.
Mm,
It's the same skill. It's like they say with electricity, you can use electricity to cook a man's breakfast or to cook the man. It's
mm.
just electricity.
Yeah, not heard that. So true.
And
Wow.
so it's my family, past, present, next generation. I look at every single one of them, and I am who I am because of all of them.
Mm,
All of my aunts and my uncles and my cousins, they're all over the world. and and I'm very grateful.
yeah. That's I could do a whole nother hour-long podcast just going off of that, And I just think I was thinking that exactly, and you said it. It's like your grandfather paved the road for you in many ways, and you're
Yes.
paving the road for your daughters and your grandson and the family that keeps blossoming from there. But I
Yes.
feel like again, it just goes back to the importance of like so much of who we are and the cultures we live are as a result of stories that have been passed down through generations. And
Yes.
it's kind of like our making our mark that it's our legacy. Like we were here because our story is being told, right?
Yeah,
And
like the Egyptians in the pyramids
yeah,
making hieroglyphic markings, or the cavemen were marking,
mhm,
drawing the buffalo in the side of the cave. These are
yeah.
stories.
Yes, yes. And what's also interesting is that I didn't. We're talking about men, and men have a lot of, and women too, but men have a lot of issues a lot of times with their own fathers.
Hmm.
I created a story about my dad that was so untrue. It wasn't until he finally came out of the closet and told
Hmm.
me his story and how he struggled with his own sexuality and his own personal demons that I was like, oh my gosh, I allowed him to rewrite the story that I had falsely written about him. And
Wow.
that allowed healing to
Yeah,
now, like we talk on a daily basis. He's like
I
one of my
love
best
that.
friends. Yeah. And that to me has allowed me to then become such a better version of myself because I didn't
Yeah.
spend so much bandwidth and mental, heartache hating on my dad, you know, or my mom, or so there is. I think I want guys and women, whoever's listening to this, to realize that we're not just talking about writing a book. We're
Right.
talking about telling a story, which
Yes.
has a ripple effect into the ethos, let's say, right?
Yes.
And it's healing, it's inspiring. You have no idea in just dropping one little pebble into the water what type of ripple effect it has on future generations or on each other.
Yes.
Which is why it's so much like if you're bored with your life, if you're not happy with where you're at, right? If you've got a
Mhm.
lot of anger, like this could be an amazing process for you to
Yes.
jump in with you and start working on just getting some of this stuff out, right?
Yes. And even if you have no anger and you solved it all and you're wonderful and amazing, how amazing would that be to share that with the world
Yeah, yeah,
too?
yeah, yeah. There's fewer of those people than there are people who are angry right now. So we need to
Yeah.
learn from that example too. So
I've learned that most of us have a bit of both sides, and that totality is what makes a story worth sharing, a story
yes,
worth telling.
yes. Well, and I think becoming queens, becoming kings is about letting go of that anger, being in a place where you can. I mean, if we think about so much of human history has been, shaped by, let's be honest, really, really hurt, wounded men. or
Yeah.
boys who've grown up into men, right? Then
Yes.
it's also been shaped by amazingly beautiful, loving human beings. You know, Martin Luther
Yes.
King, Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, like we could just,
Mhm.
the list goes on and on. All of
Yeah.
those men came from a place of love and a lack
Mhm.
of ego, you know?
Yeah.
So
Through
it's
all of their hurts.
through all their hurts, 100%, but they've done the work, right?
Yes.
So I think that's why it's like you can choose to be a warning to others of what not to become, you know,
Yes.
which that we've had plenty of those men, or you can
Mhm.
be an example of what's possible. And I think that this is a big step towards healing, is just starting to share your story, because it is important,
Yeah.
you know.
It really is. And I hear a question that's not being in some people's minds that may be coming right now. Am I ready? Yes. Now is the time. Right now, where you are, with who you are, with what you've become, with what you've done, with what you've learned, now you are ready.
Yeah.
There is nothing that you have to do to become, to be worthy of sharing your story. You are ready.
Amen. Amen. Given that, perfect segue into like how would someone take action? How would they get at least start a conversation with you, start that ball rolling?
Easy, easy, easy. Just go to awaforlife.com. That's AWA for life.com, and just schedule a one-to-one with me, and cost you nothing but 15-30 minutes of your time. And we can tap in and explore your story and show you what's possible.
Love it. Love it. Awa for life. AWAFORLIFE.com. Is that right?
The number 4, FOR, FOUR, they all will go to the same place.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Amazing. Amazing. Well, thank you so much. Like I said, we could keep talking, I think, forever. I'm
I
glad
love
to,
talking with you, Johnny. Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. Likewise. Thank you for sharing your light and your love, and for having the courage of letting go of, you know, where you were as a lawyer, right? As an attorney, and just kind of moving towards where your heart was really being called upon, because that's obviously your process of writing your books and going through the mess of that has allowed you to help so many people waste less time going through that same process, right? So thank you
Yes,
for being here. I really appreciate it.
thank you.
All right, you guys. Well, thank you. Feel free to check out Marjah on awaforlife.com if you want to connect and just have a conversation. Have the courage to get out of your routine and step into telling your story, because I can tell you right now, it's all about that. Yeah, it's all about becoming the king and queen of your life, right? And the big part of that is telling your story. So thank you, Marjah. Appreciate you so
Thank
much.
you.
We'll catch up with you guys on the next episode of the Becoming Kings. We'll talk soon. Take care.
Thanks.